You get a lot more mice and rats that try and find a home inside your position. And I saw my left foot was sort of in pieces, or my boot was hanging off. In my head, at first, I thought that I might be able to just sort of like wrap it up in a bandage and it wouldn't be too bad. But after a couple of minutes, I realized that it's actually probably going to need to get to a hospital rather quickly.
Long in the UK, we've been trying to support Ukraine. There's a lot of money goes out to Ukraine, but understanding what's actually happening on the front line eludes all of us because none of us have that experience. Back in the World War One, World War Two, most of the casualties were caused by artillery shells. Now it's all about drones and drone warfare. Millions of drones being produced, and so it's a huge privilege today to be able to have a guest who is actually was on the front line in Ukraine, who's been injured, but we'll get into that, and is hoping to go back to the front line. We'll definitely get back into that. But welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you very much, Sean. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, if we can get into, I mean, I, as an aviator, as pilot of my life, what is a day in the life of a guy on the front line like? What does it feel like? What does it look like? When you sleep? How do you eat? How do you survive? Give us a sort of canter through that day in the life of the front line in the Ukraine war.
So most teams, like my team, the team I was working with, will do rotations onto the front line. So it typically be between a 7 and 14 day rotation. That's what we try to aim for. Some units do longer, some units will do shorter. Um, it does get more difficult depending on the unit you're with and the availability you have for vehicles to actually do a rotation onto the front line. Rotating in and out is one of the most dangerous parts because one of the most dangerous times because you can be spotted very easily by enemy drones and they can engage your vehicle coming in and out. So um, we try and do rotations when they've been promised, but they do sometimes last a little bit longer. So I've been on to missions on the front line for 1 day, and I've been on for nearly 1 month. That was because I volunteered to stay for a longer period of time to get more experience. But we would try and rotate between 1 and 2 weeks. So you'd be living near the front line in a town or a village near the front in a safe house, which would be um, basically like a rented house, typically an abandoned house that's been left from people who've evacuated to the west. So you'd be living there with your team. There's not really, other than areas in Western Ukraine or further back from the front, there aren't really big military bases anymore where you've got hundreds of guys all training and living in one area. There are areas where that happens, but they're obviously very juicy targets for Russian drones and missiles. So if they discover that there is a big training base and there's a large group of soldiers in one area, then they will try and target that. So we typically live, or all the forces typically live in houses spread out in villages and towns near the front line. And yeah, you'll live there when you're in your off rotation, when you're in your off time, and you'll train, prepare, you repair your equipment, rest, get new equipment, whatever you need to do, prepare for the next rotation going out. And when you're on the front line, my unit specifically, I was in a drone unit, or I'm in a drone unit. We would live, pretty much everyone lives underground in a trench system or in blindages and bunkers. Ukraine has very comprehensive fortifications now along in Donbass, where I was fighting. They built a lot of positions deep into the ground. So you're operating typically out of a trench system or a small blindage, which is basically a hole in the ground, like a small bunker. And yeah, you'll live and work out of that for the time that you're on the front line. And if you have to go out of that position to find drones or to, in some cases, engage enemy forces that have come to your position, then you'll do that, make a plan to go and do that. But that's again another very risky time for you. The infantry, they will do pretty much the same thing. They will go to a position on the front line. They will also live underground, but they will be going out and doing combat patrols or reacting to enemy forces that are moving into our area and going and finding them and destroying them typically. And we will be supporting them as a drone unit. We'll be supporting them as they do that. And we work very closely with infantry. When they move, we'll be flying to support them.
How's it? I mean, because it must be very wet. I mean, we get into the sort of rainy season. If you're underground, surely you're living in a bloody puddle or a swimming pool. And if you can't get out, where do you go to the bathroom? How do you get food? You know, it seems that every time you pop your head above ground, there's stuff trying to kill you. So how does that? How do you live like that?
Yeah, there are some difficulties with that, especially now it's coming into the winter. You get a lot more mice and rats that try and find a home inside your position this time of year because it's getting colder outside, so they're trying to find some shelter. There's obviously food that you've got stored there that has to be protected from mice and rats. That's actually a major issue we have if you don't protect your food and water, you can very quickly find it's being eaten by rodents. Or it can be destroyed when your position is being shelled. That's also happened to us. You can lose part of your supplies from shelling. But some of these positions, I've been in some very nice positions. They're like full-on concrete bunkers that have been dug into the ground. Some of them are just holes in the ground that do fill up with water. But even then, the ones I've been in, we've had like basic wooden slats on the floor to sort of avoid being completely flooded out. Um, Another major issue with it getting wet and cold now is vehicles coming in and out. They very easily get stuck. We pretty much always use armored vehicles where we're operating because it's very dangerous. There's a lot of drones in the air, and they're often getting stuck. They're like big MRAP armored vehicles, and yeah, they easily get stuck, which then presents a very nice target for uh, enemy drones and enemy artillery. So a lot of infills now are getting done on foot, um, which means you've got to walk in through tree lines for several kilometers, 5 to 10 kilometers, and you've got to carry a lot of equipment with you. So that's another quite difficult task for teams to carry out. You've got to have
How
quite a good level of fitness
how do you
for that.
do that? Given that, I mean, there must be, as the winter comes along, there's less foliage around,
Hmm.
so there's less cover. I mean, at least in the summer you can walk along tree lines and have some sort of protection. All of that disappears once the leaves on the trees come down, and for the next few months, there's nothing. How on earth do you protect yourself from that infill and exfil?
Yeah, it's very difficult, and it's one of the reasons the fighting slows down rather drastically over winter. We have these issues, but the enemy also has these issues as well. So they also struggle to resupply their positions just as we do. So the whole tempo of the fighting over the winter period sort of slows down because the main thing with the drone warfare now is that it's not necessarily just the FPVs that come and that you sort of see videos of that come and destroy vehicles and destroy human targets on the ground. That does happen, but the main thing is everything that happens on the front gets seen, or most things that happen get seen, particularly vehicles, large movements, troop movements, um, get seen by drones. So we see the enemy when they move. Sorry, I just got a phone call, and they see us when we move. So the difficulty is trying to move without being seen and as you say in the winter now, with less foliage and less cover, it does become much more difficult. It's not impossible. There are times that we can move, and we obviously do need to resupply positions and rotate out positions. So it is something that we still do, um, but the risk of being seen increases. But as does the risk for the enemy as well. So, their drone teams need to be resupplied just as ours do. So they also have to slow down the rate at which they can, um, you know, man a position.
Henry, can you talk a little bit more about what it means to be in a drone unit? I mean, you say you're part of a broader team with the infantry, but I
Mhm.
don't know how much detail you can go into. But are you specialists? Are you jack of all trades? You're doing maintenance and flying and everything in between. How does it work out
Yeah,
in a unit?
my particular unit, we're infantry first, so we all do the infantry training, and we all do continuous infantry training even after we've specialized for drone, but for working in the drone company. We're a separate company, but we're attached to an infantry battalion. So we support them directly and we work with them directly, and we still train, and we train with them directly, and we still train our own company to do all the stuff the infantry can do in case we need to operate like the infantry, which does happen sometimes. So yeah, we will keep all our infantry skills up to date, and then we train obviously for flying drones, and typically we'll try and train everyone to be able to do everything. So engineering wise with the drones, in terms of fixing them, putting them together, coding them, getting them up and running, and the explosives that need to go on them. We're all able to do that, and we're all able to fly them as well. You will have some people who are better pilots than others, and some people who are better engineers than others. So depending on your tasking, you can put certain people to be pilot and certain people to be engineer. But we try and teach everyone the same. We try and make sure everyone is able to do at least able to do each task up to an operational level, because you can very easily lose people to injuries. And if you've got someone who can only be an engineer but not a pilot, and your pilot gets injured, then you suddenly you can't half the team is not able to operate. So everyone has to be able to do all tasks. That's not how all units work or other units work. They will have people who are only who just do engineering, and the people who are just pilots, um, and they will also not really do any infantry stuff. Um, but
And
we try and do a bit of everything.
and we can only base this on what we've seen, but how is it handling the weaponry? Because some of the imagery looks like you're literally strapping on, an RPG or whatever else it might be. Is that a little bit nerve wracking handling that, or is there now some pretty good safety breaks?
Yeah, there's a lot of old Soviet munitions that have been adapted to be fitted onto drones. A lot of the most common one you'll see is like an RPG warhead that's been modified to go on an FPV. There's a lot of hand grenades that we drop from reconnaissance drones that are literally just strapped on with like a Velcro strap that opens up and just drops the hand grenade, and you put that on. You arm that by putting it on and pulling the pin out, and the Velcro strap just holds down the handle. So when it's released, it just drops like a grenade, and it just goes off on its own fuse. So yeah, there's a lot of that, and there's also some homemade stuff that's just completely homemade from um, explosives that we've taken out of other older munitions that can't be used for can't be directly retrofitted. So we this is not something I do. This is or our team do. We have full on like engineering teams that make specifically make munitions. But yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. There's like modified 30 millimeter cannon rounds that we've adapted. We've got like 3D printed fins that we screw onto them. Some quite ingenious stuff actually. There's like these particular 30 millimeter cannon rounds I'm talking about. They're some of my favorite munitions to drop because it's a 3D printed fin on a little like handle that you screw into the back, and you put like a tiny little blasting cap, like a primer in, and it's like a miniature shotgun shell. You put that in the back of the round, and then you drop when the round is dropped. It's just a metal pin that, on impact to the ground, hits the charging cap and detonates the round. It's just like a completely homemade um, explosive that that you drop from a commercially an off-the-shelf drone that you can buy.
Have you seen, because there's been a lot of talk about technology, that the rapid advances of, because the early drones were being jammed, then there was sort of terrain mapping, then it went on to the, fiber optic and whatever. How do you at the front line keep pace with that? Have you got a whole lot of Tefal headed, very smart individuals that are constantly throwing new stuff at you, or how much are you involved in that iterative process?
Yeah, we've got quite a few smart guys. In my unit, I work with, or all my unit is foreign fighters, but we have Ukrainian commanders who are very good. They're sort of young, the new generation of Ukrainian commanders who see that we need to use drones in particular and technology to have the sort of upper hand in this war. So they're very keen for us to use new drones on the front. So we're testing stuff on the front line that's been given to us by companies who want to test their equipment. Some of it's successful, some of it not so successful. And there's a lot of stuff um, there's a lot of experimental stuff that comes out that we look into and we try and get hold of, that we go and test off the front line, and then we maybe test on the front line. We do see quite a bit of that. The fiber optic stuff has obviously come in now, but that's quite a it's quite a simple. Um, it sounds maybe more complicated than an analog radio controlled drone, but you're basically just putting a fiber optic um, spool onto a drone and controlling it, sending the signal through the fiber optic cable through the wire, much like the old wire guided sort of missiles that they had in the Cold War. I think we maybe still even have some maybe that the army used, but
I guess where I was going with that was, do you have much of an input into, going, you sit down in the bloody trench eating your dried biscuit in a pond, going, if only we could have this capability. Do you have that ability to reach back and try and refine requirements so these really smart guys can try and work out how to help you?
yeah, we do that. We feed back to our engineers. How we've been operating, what issues we've had with the drones we're using, and we'll often try and come up with in-house stuff to fix that, or we'll speak to other units in our brigade or in a wider sphere of drone units operating in Ukraine. We're always trying to sort of improve what we're doing, especially if we see other units, friendly units or enemy units, using something that we haven't seen before. We'll try and feed that back to our command and our engineers, and we'll try and see what we can do to implement that ourselves. So yeah, we do see a lot of that, but we do. There's a lot of new technology coming out, but we're still using. I mean, most of our reconnaissance drones we're using are off-the-shelf DJI products, which is it's a Chinese company that make the DJI Mavic and the new DJI Matrice, which is a bigger version of the old Mavic that's been used by both sides pretty much since the start of the war, but used extensively now. Although there are these new technologies coming out, both sides are still using these off-the-shelf, relatively cheap, but relatively very effective drones. So we still see, although there are some, particularly the bigger drones, the bigger octocopters and that kind of stuff, Baba Yagas and Vampires, which are the much bigger bomber drones. We see those being used. There's various different types of those, but reconnaissance drones, we're still using these off-the-shelf, commercially available drones.
Mindful of the time as well, though, can I just bridge you on? Is that I think one of the things that both Greg and I spent a lot of time on operations, but not on in the front line in a trench with a constant threat of your enemy deliberately trying to do you harm. What's the psychological impact? How do you cope with the fact that every day might be the end of your life, that things are happening around you? You must have seen and heard and witnessed some horrible things along the way. How do you and your team manage that psychologically?
Um, yeah, it's definitely an interesting point because we do have there are some guys who are just completely unfazed by it. And there are some guys who are really shaken, especially particularly after their first. You'll know after your first time being shelled or being having a targeted attack, particularly a targeted drone attack, FPV attack, which is sort of the most terrifying thing you'll experience because that's basically when the enemy has seen your position and they send a swarm of FPVs to try and actually blow out the. They'll see where the entrances are. They'll see where you've been coming in and out, and they'll try and blow the entrance open, and they'll try and get drones through your entrance and try and kill you that way. Some people we try and deal with it. Or my team, the way we dealt with it, we just sort of just made some jokes, or we just sort of. There's not really much you can do when you're there. You have to accept that if you go to operate on the front line and you're doing this job, then you will be shelled at some point, and you will be attacked by most likely by enemy drones and certainly enemy artillery. You just have to accept that that's a part of the job. Some people don't, like I mentioned, some people after their first rotation are very shaken, and that's absolutely fine. It's not really something to be excited about, particularly when enemies trying to kill you. But a lot of us have already accepted that that's a possibility when we came here to do this job. So most of us are sort of unfazed by it. Some people are phased, and then they go on to do either to leave the unit or to do a job that doesn't require them going to the front line as often or at all. They can go and do. There's a lot of other jobs you can do, logistics or engineering away from the front that doesn't require you to be sat in a trench like we are. So yeah, some people are not very good at coping with it, and that's fine.
Well, I wonder if we could bridge on to as well because you were injured, badly injured,
Mhm.
and by a mine left you with a nasty injury. But rather than eating your sandwiches, can you just talk us through how that happened? Because I met you in Superhumans, which is helping people recover when they've lost arms or legs, and not just physically but mentally. And I was absolutely fascinated by your story. So, where were you? How did it happen? And particularly, how on earth were you extracted and find yourself where you are now?
Yeah, so yeah, I'll talk through how I was injured or the day I was injured and how I ended up getting superhumans. We just got to our position that we've been operating for a few weeks. As a team leader, as my second rotation going out as team leader with my team. We'd just got on the ground. We'd got to our position that morning, and we started getting shelled pretty heavily and receiving targeted drone attacks. The enemy had found our position, and they were trying to destroy it. It was a small trench system that had a little bit of cover over it when we first started, and by the time we left, all the trees around it had been completely destroyed. All the cover had been destroyed, and our working area had taken some direct hits and been destroyed as well. But just before that happened, we decided that we were taking a bit too much fire to sustain working from this position. So I went out with one of my teammates to find a new position. So we had an area that we suspected there was an old position in, but we weren't sure. We weren't sure if it was manned by friendly forces. So we went out on foot to go and check this position, and we're walking through a tree line, and you're always checking where we're operating. There's also a lot of enemy movement that I'll briefly describe how the enemy is moving at the moment in our area. they because you can be seen so easily by our drones, or anyone can be seen by enemy and friendly drones. Teams are moving now in 2 to 4 man units, and they're moving through tree lines, sometimes at night, usually during the day, but they're moving through thick tree lines, and they're slipping past our observations by moving in smaller units, two, 3, maybe 4 guys. So we have to be aware that there may also be enemies in our immediate area that we haven't seen on our drone feed. So we're patrolling through. Everywhere has to be sort of it's a bit of a grey area that we're in, and you're looking around, checking your sectors. And I looked up to check the sky, because there's always drones flying around. I mean, just sort of paint a picture of what it's like all across the front now. There's just drones of all different types flying around all the time. You've got friendly drones that are going out to their area. You've got friendly drones coming back to their team to change batteries, to go back out. You've got enemy drones that are coming over to your area, and you've got enemy drones that are going back to. And there's bigger drones that got a longer range, they're going further. There's fixed wings flying around. It's just like you can there's not really a moment where you can't hear a drone in the distance, or flying close to you or flying towards you. So you're always listening out for drones, and you're always looking up and checking the sky. And I looked up to check the sky, and then the next thing I knew, I was on the ground, and it became pretty apparent that I stepped on a mine that I hadn't seen, obviously. So luckily for me, it was a small mine. Probably a lithostock or a leaf mine, they're called. They're like these little green mines that are fired either out of artillery or dropped from drones. The particular track we were walking on was like quite a well-used, friendly track through our tree line, our friendly tree line, and it's possible that track was seen by an enemy drone, and they deliberately dropped mines in that area. So anyway, I found myself on the ground after this explosion. It took about 2 or 3 seconds to realize what had happened exactly, because you're sort of you're in shock a little bit, or your brain has to register what exactly has just happened. And I saw my left foot was sort of in pieces, or my boot was hanging off. My boot managed to save quite a lot, or absorb quite a lot of the blast. I had some good leather boots on, some Altberg made in North Yorkshire boots. They're proper army boots, which were good. They were very nice boots, which I used to polish all the time, and now they've been destroyed. But they probably saved quite a bit of my foot, which didn't matter in the end because it was amputated. But anyway, I saw my boot was hanging off, and I immediately got a tourniquet out and put a tourniquet on my just above my knee, my left knee. You're meant to put it high and tight, higher up your leg, but I had various bits of armor, soft armor, around my groin area, and I could see, as I was putting the tourniquet around my leg, I could see that it was my left foot that was injured, and I couldn't see any major bleeding further up my leg. Some mines have shrapnel in them, and the shrapnel will obviously cause other injuries, separate to the main blast injuries. But luckily, this one didn't. It was just explosive. So I saw there wasn't any other major bleeding. I put the tourniquet on above my left knee, and then I was able to assess the damage to my foot. You sort of want to sort of panic a little bit, but you can't really let yourself do that, because you're still in an area that you're still in quite a dangerous area, particularly if you're spotted by an enemy drone. You're definitely in trouble then. I was in a thick tree line, so you've got a fair bit of safety with that in terms of cover and physical protection from enemy FPVs that try and get in. So I was lucky in that respect. But I looked at my foot. By that time, my teammate had got there and managed to cut off my boot. As he was cutting my boot off, I called in on the radio and told them that I'd been injured. I stepped on stepped on a mine, and I managed to put a tourniquet on, but I was probably going to require. Um, in my head, at first, I thought that I might be able to just sort of like wrap it up in a bandage and it wouldn't be too bad. But after a couple of minutes, I realized that it's actually probably going to need to get to a hospital rather quickly. So yeah, I told them that I mean my foot wasn't completely blown off, but I could see now that we'd removed the boot, I could see that there was quite a bit of damage to the bottom of my foot. I could see it all sort of hanging down. But the main thing was the bleeding had been stopped with the tourniquet. And once you have a tourniquet on, you're not bleeding. You can kind of relax a little bit. You know that you're not going to bleed to death. My major worry then, my two major worries was one, the tourniquet was above my knee. I was fairly high up, and I know that if it's left on for too long, you risk losing the whole limb below the tourniquet. That was my main concern in my head, and the other was getting out back to a stabilization point or off the front line before it got dark. So at this point, it was about 7:15, and it gets dark at about 8:30, and we can't do extractions in the dark because you can just see vehicles so easily on thermal. The enemy has got a lot of thermal drones, more than us in that area, and vehicles coming in and out in the dark get spotted very quickly, and they can be engaged very quickly by enemy. So we managed to get to an area where we knew our vehicle could get to. It's actually where we rotated into. So we were confident that the drivers would know where to go, and basically we had a few scares where there were enemy drones were looking along our tree line for us, because they knew that someone had been injured. They could hear our radio traffic, and they were searching the area for that injured person, which was me, and for my team. And they knew there'd be a vehicle coming in and out. There were a few FPVs that were flying around, but we managed to avoid those. And I was extremely lucky. I mean, the vehicle came in just as it was getting dark. I had to put a red light on. We had to flag it down with a red light also. The vehicle managed to get in, and I managed to get out in that vehicle and to an ambulance, which took me to a stabilization point. And all in all, it took about 3 hours until I was on the operating table, and they were taking off the tourniquets and managing. I will mention I managed to before I was medevaced in the vehicle, I moved the tourniquet down from above my knee to just above my ankle. So that's something you do in tactical field care that we were all trained to do. So me and my team managed to do that, and that was another moment I felt a bit of relief, because I knew now that I was only going to lose below the tourniquet, which was just my foot, not my left leg above the knee. So that was another big relief. And yeah, I managed to get to the stabilization point, and they did an initial sort of surgery. Wasn't like full surgery. I wasn't actually put under. They wanted me to stay awake because they wanted to ask me some more questions, and they wanted me to remain conscious. Luckily, they put a nerve blocker in by that time, because there's quite a lot of nerves in the bottom of your foot. So it's a fairly painful experience up until that point. And they decided not to amputate my foot at that point, but to sort of wrap it up. And they sent me here to Superhumans. They managed to get me a spot here. My commander.
Quick question though. I mean, because when I first visited Superhumans, you play off this. You were out in 3 hours, but so many of your contemporaries, so many of the people who get injured, it's almost measured in days, not hours, to get them out. And of course, those tourniquets therefore complicate the recovery, don't they, of the individuals? So that was really key for you.
Yeah, for me, yeah, I was very lucky with my extraction and my time of getting to a hospital, particularly this hospital here. But other people, there's another guy in my unit who was injured a couple of weeks after me, and he was in the field for 6 days with a tourniquet on, with 2 tourniquets on. Had a very similar injury to me. He also stepped on a mine, and they just couldn't get him out for 6 days. That's quite an extreme case. That doesn't happen particularly often. that was just due to where they were operating. They were operating over a reservoir, so they had to actually get on a boat to get back to safety. So he's got a pretty remarkable story of having his injury for so long out in the field. It's actually two guys who had a similar injury. Their feet, their left foot was blown off, and they had tourniquets on, but they were out in the field for a long time, and that does complicate massively the recovery later on, particularly the infection. The you almost well, you definitely have an infection after sort of any injury, any open injury out in the field, particularly after 6 days of being out in the field with an injury. You've definitely got a pretty complicated infection then. So he lost quite a bit more of his limb. He managed to keep his knee and some bone and part of his leg below the knee. So he's lucky there, but he lost quite a lot more of his limb than I did. Particularly, that was because he was out in the field for so long. He had some infection complications afterwards, and it's also quite has a bigger psychological effect when you're out in the field for that long. Just having experiencing pain for that long is not
So
particularly good.
Superhumans is where I met you. A remarkable facility. Just quickly tap through what's your recovery? How is it going? How long are you going to be there for?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know firsthand how good they are here, particularly compared to some other facilities you can go to in Ukraine. So I'm very thankful to be here. My recovery so far has been fairly straightforward. When I arrived here, I had my foot still, and then I made the decision after about 5 or 6 days to amputate my foot, just purely because the damage to it was so severe to the point where they were able to repair it or save it, if you will, but I wouldn't have been able to run again or particularly do any strenuous activities on my foot. So I chose to amputate it, and that would allow me to run again, basically with a prosthetic. So after the amputation, which was about a month ago, no, about 5 weeks ago, I takes 4 weeks or so until you're able to work with the prosthetic, and then you get your first fitting for prosthetic, which I did last week, and I've recently been working with that, which is what I'm off to do this afternoon, and that takes another 3 to 4 weeks, and then you can sort of be left alone to continue your recovery there. It takes time. It takes a lot of time. You need quite a bit of patience, especially when you've come directly from the front line and been working every day and training all the time to having to sit and wait for your body to recover until you can walk again. Takes a little bit of patience, but yeah, you see a lot of the other guys here as well with um, much more severe injuries and amputations than mine, and yeah, I don't really have much to complain about when you see some of the other guys and what they're going through, and they remain positive as well. So I'm pretty happy as things go with my amputation.
Yeah, so it's a remarkable story. And then you said you were still determined to go back to the front line. And having been through all you've been through, what is it that's drawing you back to the front line?
Yeah, well, the main reason I want to go back is I don't want to just sort of give up after having it. It is a major injury, I suppose, in a way, losing a limb, but I'm still able to, when I recover from this, I'll still be able to move and run and operate in a similar way as to how I was doing before. It'll probably be a while before I can go directly back to positions on the front line, but I can certainly do stuff before then, working with my team, training guys. There's a lot of stuff I can do just back from the front before I'm fit enough and able enough to go back to positions on the front. But yeah, I don't want to sort of just give up after having a small injury, particularly when I can go. If I went back home now, if I came back to the UK, I feel like I would. Firstly, I'm not sure exactly what I would do straight away, and secondly, I'd feel like it's sort of giving up on my team a little bit and sort of letting the enemy win in a way. You know, if I'm injured and then I can't go back to the fight, then yeah, sort of letting them succeed in their objective, which was to take soldiers out of the fight. So.
And what is your, if you were, what are the things that you would most need? I mean, the war from a grand strategic perspective, Ukraine is slowly getting pushed back. What from your perspective, what more should the West be doing? What would make a difference to your part of the war?
Um, we, we lack sort of particularly in drones. Um, that's something that we lack in. What they're very good at doing in Ukraine, and what Ukrainians are very good at doing, and what we're very good at doing is using what we have to the optimizing what we have. The Russians have a lot more equipment than us. They can replace most of their equipment that we destroy. They replace the same day. That includes personnel as well. We destroy a lot of Russian soldiers, and they just keep coming again the next day or the same day. It's the same thing with their equipment. What we lack is just the volume of equipment needed to match the enemy's capacity and their capability. It's what we really need is a combined um, European force or a NATO force or whatever it might be to actually come in and assist Ukraine in smashing the Russian forces, um, as weak as they are now. That's probably something that's not going to happen right now, but that's essentially to win the war, to push Russia back completely out of Ukraine, back to its original borders. That's what we would need. There's not really anything would um, that would. There's a lot of equipment and weapons that we can give to Ukraine that we can use here, but in terms of actually being able to win, um, having a resounding victory, we would need a proper force from the West to step in, and that would, when you see how the Ukrainians fight and the way that we can can engage a force far bigger than our own with much more resources than us, we can hold them, or we can slow them down massively, and we can actually hold our own against them. If we were to, if the West was to engage them now with the firepower that we've got and the forces that we can actually bring to bear, then we would, I'm sure we would smash the Russian forces as they stand now. But yeah, that's a long answer to your question. I mean, we need more of everything really, and more soldiers and more training.
And
In reality, is what we need.
Henry, how would you describe then the national mood in Ukraine? Is it a quiet determination and a resistance? Is it desperation? How does it feel, both within the military and sort of within the civilian population?
Yeah, within the military, it's still strong determination. There's a lot of anger. Most guys everyone really in the military has friends or people that they've worked with who've been killed. So there's not really much talk of appeasement or giving the Russians anything. They don't really see why the Russians should be given anything, particularly land. So there's not really much of an appetite for that amongst the soldiers. Amongst the civilians in Ukraine, there's a bit more of an appetite for peace, because people are getting a little bit tired of living under constant bombardment, of the power being knocked out. I'm not sure how it'll be this winter, but the Russian drone capability in terms of long range strike drones, the Shahids and stuff like that, is their capacity has increased, and even now, before winter's sort of started, there's some big power cuts in Kyiv and other major cities. So that will definitely, people are starting to get a little bit sick of it, but no one's really talking of appeasing Russia. They want the war to end, but um, no one wants to appease Russia in doing so, which means that the war can't really end because unless we win. So it's just kind of it's a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a stalemate, I suppose. People are hoping something big will happen. But yeah, there's not really much of a defeatist sort of mentality, if that answers your question. No one's talking about giving in to Russia or surrendering or anything like that. I've not heard anyone sort of talk about that.
And is there a sense of hanging off every word that comes out of the White House, or is a frustration that it's almost not worth listening anymore to some of the stuff that?
Yeah, I think it's getting to the point where it's sort of not worth listening to anymore, I think. And people, yeah, in the beginning there was a lot of frustration, a lot of anger with what was coming out of the White House, and a lot of people were dismayed, I think. And now it's just got to the point where people are realizing that they're not going to be able to rely on the US to back them as they did before this new administration, and they're hoping that other countries or the European countries will step up to the mark and be able to sort of fill that gap, which hopefully is something that we will see. But yeah, I'm not sure how that will play out exactly.
Yeah, I mean, to give you a little bit of reassurance, it's not much. I think there is a slight turning now of the view, but it is slow and it's painfully slow. I think in me and Sean, you've got two people who would be, in like a shot, but it's just not happening at the speed it should be. But I think there's a growing recognition now that America's not going to be the answer.
Yeah, yeah, it's well, hopefully we can step up to the mark, and the UK and Europe can maybe do a bit more. But I mean, they have to do a little bit more. I mean, if we ask ourselves if we want Ukraine to win this war, then we have to do something a little bit different, because at the moment we're not winning. Russia's winning, and if we want Russia to not to win this war, then we have to change something in the way that we're approaching this, and that's not um, drip feeding weapons or even giving large amounts of weapons to Ukraine. We're probably going to have to really win this. I think we probably have to be involved directly in some way. But yeah, we're yet to see if that will if we can get aggressive enough to actually do something like that.
Henry, I'm mindful of the time because you've got
Oh, yeah.
an appointment to head off to. Genuinely, it's humbling. I said when I met you to hear your story, but there's nobody can tell the story better than people who've actually been there. And it is truly inspirational to hear how people can operate under such very difficult situations. And also, when injured, I'm genuinely delighted you found yourself to Superhumans, because having raised a bit of money to help and seeing what a fantastic facility that is. It's not just physical, it's also the prosthetic, and then it's the mental side of it. But it's been a huge privilege to listen to your story, and thank you so much for joining us.
I echo that, Henry. I mean, if they hadn't called it Superhuman, I think we'd have called you Superhuman anyway. I mean, there's definitely a book in there somewhere that you might want to write all this down one day. So if you do get a bit of spare time, seriously consider that. But look, we wish you all the best with your recovery, and every good wish for whatever comes next. But you're an incredible guy. Right? This story, I'll tell you, it's going to really chime with our listeners. Well done, and good luck with the recovery.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you. It's been a pleasure having me on. Thank you.